Hi everyone, my name is Maureen and I'm going to guide you through your gnome kit today. So I have a small business called the Gnomestead where I create handcrafted gnomes, and I'm also a little bit obsessed with gnomes, as you can see that my friend's sitting here beside me. So I'm excited to share this with you today. So I'm going to guide you through your kit right now. So in your kit, you'll have a little peg person. You're going to have a little bit of wool roving, some embroidery floss, the pattern, and the pattern actually comes from Weave Folk Art, and you can go there. They have lots of fabulous gnome-related, Waldorf-related crafts on their website, so they're well worth checking out. There's also a piece of wool felt and a sewing needle, and then a little pin needle. Extra things that you might want to have, well, you are going to need to have, you're going to need to get some scissors. You're going to want to have a pen or a pencil just to outline the pattern onto your felt. Glue of some kind. A glue gun is actually going to be the best thing to use, but if you don't have it, you can use white craft glue. You might just have to use your fingers to hold things on. And if you want to get really creative, you can also have some paint and a tiny little brush, the tiniest brush you can find to paint on some eyes. So let's get started. So to start, you're going to want to cut out your pattern. So you'll see one is listed hat and the other one is listed body. So, and I really like, this is the pattern that I first used to sew gnomes, and I think it's a great starting pattern to use. So I'm just going to cut out my two pieces. There we go. And now you can either pin these pieces to your fabric to cut out. I'm just going to lay them on. I trust myself enough. And you're going to take your pen or your pencil and just draw around them so you know where you're cutting. And I am going to give a disclaimer. Wool felt, you can order it online from many Waldorf toy stores. They usually have a craft section, and wool felt is just far superior. I'm kind of a felt snob. You can just touch it and feel how much harder it is than the cheap felt you might buy from Michael's or from the dollar store. It just has, I don't know, it's just more durable and more long lasting. So I'm a bit of a purist. I only work with wool felt. So after you've drawn, so I don't know if you can see that, but I've drawn my patterns onto my felt. I'm just going to cut them out. So this is the easy part. And then we're going to get ready for the next step, which is the sewing. Don't mind I have two pugs here with me, my assistants. Okay, so I'm going to move the camera in another angle so we'll be able to see how to sew these pieces together. Okay, so now we're just about ready to sew. We have our pattern pieces cut out. We have our embroidery floss. So I'm going to use some white floss just to show you the contrast, okay? Just so you'll be able to see the stitches a little bit better. So what you're going to do, you're going to start, you'll see if you pull this apart, I want you to pull it into 3 threads and 3 threads on either side. Sometimes the easiest way to do this, I will hold one piece in my teeth and just pull it apart. Yeah, sometimes it's can be a little bit tricky to do, but you want to pull it apart so you just have a strand with the 3 threads on there. Okay, so you want to have a fairly long piece to sew your hat. We're going to start with the hat because if we want to stitch around the rim, we're going to want to have a longer piece. So you're going to take it and thread your needle. Should go through fairly easily. And that's the other thing, with 6 strands of thread, you never get it through the needle. Okay, and just, I like to pull down so it has a really long tail. And on this end, you're just gonna wanna tie a knot. Okay, so on the furthest end, you're gonna tie a knot, and I snip it right away, so there's no tail. Okay, and then the easiest way to do this is I will take my hat and I lay it on top of the pattern. Okay, and I can see on one side it says there's an overlap line. So I know that I'm gonna wanna have this end overlapped. So I'm gonna take this end on the other side, I'm gonna take it and overlap it so that your edges meet like so. Okay, so you'll be able to tell. Then you're gonna fold it over like that, and this is where your little pin's gonna come in handy. You're gonna wanna pin that in place, like so. Okay, and this end here, you'll see that this end is not pinned, but for this you're gonna have to use your fingers. So you're just gonna wanna tuck that in and just hold it in place, like so. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, you're gonna see at the very top here, I have a little bit of a opening. So that's where I'm gonna hide my knot. So I'm gonna take my thread, put it through that little opening and pull it all the way through. So you'll see that my little knot is hidden in there. So I'm gonna pinch that end closed, make sure my thread is coming over on top, and I'm gonna go through the other side right here. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. I'm gonna pull my thread almost all the way. And when I have that little loop there at the top, I'm gonna take my needle and I'm gonna pass it through the loop and pull it shut. So it should look like that. Okay, then again, I'm going to go through the far side towards myself, pull my thread almost all the way through, and when I have that loop, I'm going to put my needle through. So it should, hopefully you can see that, it should start to look like this. I'll do a few more stitches so you'll be able to see. So this is called a blanket stitch. And if you can't tell by my tutorial, I mean, if you need a better tutorial, if you went on YouTube and looked it up, you probably find a far superior one to what I'm doing. I'm a one-woman show today and trying to do this as best I can. So again, you're going in through the far side and coming out through the loop. And you'll see the further down you get, and you always want to make sure your thread is on that side, otherwise you're gonna have something crazy happen. So you'll see this is what it should start to look like. Okay, your thread is going to be red though, so it'll hide very well on your red felt. Yeah, so you always want to make sure, sometimes your thread is going to try to do some tricky things. I always want to make sure it's on that side. Okay, so I'm going to keep sewing. So again, always in through the far side towards yourself, and then pass your needle the opposite way through that loop. Okay, in through the far side towards yourself, and then pass your needle the opposite way through that loop. And always make sure your thread is all staying on that side so you're not going over your hat. Okay, so I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna keep sewing. I'm gonna sew all the way down. So I'm gonna go all the way down here, and then I'm gonna go all the way around this edge. Okay, that's exactly what I want you to do. So, and once you reach a certain point, these needles are great because you can actually sew over them and they pull out really, really easily. Okay, so I am going to just pause this and come back when I am almost done sewing around there so you can see what that looks. Okay, so once I've sewn all the way down, and your stitches should look something like this, you can actually remove your pin because it's all held together now by your stitches. And then to transition from here to sewing around the rim, I'm just gonna take my thread, I'm gonna pull it down like that, and just start. So I'm going to go in through the inside of my hat. I'm going to pull that through, and again, go through my loop. And I am going to do that. And you just really have to be careful your thread doesn't get tangled. Sometimes it'll get tangled a little bit. It's a little frustrating, but be patient if it happens to you. So I'm going to now go all the way around the rim of my hat. I like doing this. You don't have to do this, but I like doing it because it just helps make your gnome look a little more finished. So I am a little type A, my personality, so I just a bit of a perfectionist. I like things to look perfect, or as perfect as possible. So yeah, continue going all the way around. Okay, so now you're gonna see I'm done sewing around the rim. So your finishing stitch, I'm gonna come through, I'm gonna do one last little blanket stitch. So in through the back, through that loop. Okay, and then I like to hide my final stitch on the inside. So I'm gonna flip my hat so I can see the inside, little brim here. I'm just gonna kind of like gently go through the felt, not all the way through, but I'm just gonna catch a little chunk of felt on my needle, pull my needle through. Okay, and I have a little loop here, you'll see. I'm gonna go through that loop once, and I'm gonna go through it one more time. I'm gonna pull that tight, and it'll create a little knot here, and that's all you need as a finishing stitch. So I'm gonna take my scissors, chop that off. I'll try on his little hat. Oh my goodness, there we go. Perfect fit. So now we're gonna move on to the body. So what I find, sometimes the body piece is a little big. You'll see this just comes up over his body a tiny bit. So sometimes this piece needs to be trimmed the tiniest bit. So just gonna trim off a little piece just so it fits perfectly. And try to be just as straight as possible. Don't stress out if you cut too much off, but it should fit kind of like that. I like his little shoulders to be a bit exposed. So again, you're gonna thread your needle. I still have enough thread left on here from sewing the hat. So make a knot at one end, like so. Cut the tail off. Okay, and for this part, I just use my hands. Don't use a needle at all. So I'm just gonna hold this piece on my gnome. There might be, if you have a little bit of overlap, that's fine. Okay, so I just hold this in place, and to start, I'm gonna come in through the bottom here. Again, I like to hide my knots. So I'm gonna come in through the bottom of one of those pieces. Okay, and you can see there's my piece of thread sticking out. So I'm gonna go through that other piece of felt. So I'm gonna go in through one piece of felt, through the other piece of felt, pull that needle through, and again, there's that loop. I'm gonna pass my needle through the loop and pull it tight. And I'm gonna keep doing that until his body is sewn on. So in through both pieces of felt, through that loop, and pull. In through both pieces of felt, through that loop, and pull. Okay, so you can see that through both pieces of felt, and back through that loop, and pull. And your stitch should look something like that. If this is your first time working with this stitch, you know what? It might take you a few tries to make it look good. It took me a while before I got the hang of it. I like the blanket stitch. It looks nice and neat. It gives a nice finished look to whatever you're sewing, so that's why I like using it. Okay, and now I'm at the top. So if you wanted, you could even continue sewing all the way around here. So if I were to do that, what I would do is I would just slide off the body and I would continue to sew all the way around the top. But I'm not going to do that today. So I'm gonna do one final stitch. And then I'm gonna go to the inside. This is where I like to hide all my finishing stitches. I'm gonna make a little stitch, not all the way through the felt, just partially through the felt. Okay, pull that till it's almost all the way through. And I'm gonna go through that loop once, through that loop twice, and pull, and it creates a nice little knot. And I can snip that off. And there's my little body piece. And the body piece actually just slides on like so. So you don't have to glue that part on at all. It just slides on. It stays on pretty well. So if you wanted to add a dab of glue, you could. I typically don't. It stays on really well. But when I add the beard, I do like to glue down the hat just to, I find the hats can slip off quite easily. So I'm just gonna fire up my glue gun and we'll take you through that part. Okay, so now we're ready to decorate our gnomes. So the beard is totally optional. You can decide if you want to add the little beard or not. So I gave everybody a generous enough piece of roving. So this is wool roving. Again, I'm a bit of a purist. I like my wool. So I'm gonna take this. I'm just gonna sort of make a piece that looks like this. So you want kind of a thick piece. I like to keep my stitches to the back. So I'm gonna wrap that around. We'll see what it looks like. Do I like that? Yeah. Then what I'll do is I'm gonna take my glue gun, or if you have craft glue, I'm just gonna do a little bead kind of around the bottom where I would want his beard to go. I'll take my roving, put it on top. You gotta be kind of quick with this part. And just hold it on there. So you'll have a little beard that looks like this. Okay, now the end pieces here, just gonna wanna try to hold those up in the back. You can even cut them off once you have your beard in place. And then you're gonna take your hat. Okay, I put a little bead of glue on the inside of my hat, like so. I just line the rim with glue. I take my hat and put it on top and pull it down really, really fast. There we go. There is my little gnome with his beard. And again, I like my seams to sort of go near the back. I like them to be hidden a bit. Okay, and now as another finishing touch, if you're feeling really adventurous, I used to be awful at painting on eyes. And so, I always learned when I was a Waldorf homeschooler to kind of leave toys open-ended so children could use their imagination. So I never painted eyes or faces onto my little peg people. But if you wanted to, I have some black acrylic paint. I have the tiniest paintbrush imaginable. And so I'm gonna dip that in. I always like to do a little test on a piece of paper just to see what that's gonna look like. Okay, so if you want some eyes, just dip it in. I like to set my eyes far apart. So 2 little dots, one there, one there. Here we go. So that's my finished gnome, and I'm just gonna give him eyes because his little smile would be hidden in his beard somewhere. So that's it, that's your, whoops. That's your finished gnome. He was trying to roll away. And so what we're gonna ask you to do when you're all done is we're gonna ask you to take your gnome and set him up in a miniature world somewhere. Create a fantastic little place for him to live, and send us a picture of your gnome in their little environment. So we're doing this project as part of the Welcome to My World pop-up art exhibit, which is traveling around the county. It's currently in Arnprior at the library. And so, yeah, we thought it would be fun to get you guys to create your own miniature worlds using your little gnomes. So I'm going to show you my gnome's mini world. So here we go. This is my gnome's mini world. So we have rainbows, of course, some toadstools, some friends. He's got a beautiful little gnome house behind him. I think this would be a great place to live if I were a gnome. So I hope you've enjoyed this workshop today. Hope you have lots of fun making your little gnome, and I can't wait to see where you put yours. So thank you so much for supporting Ottawa Valley Community Arts and for joining me in this tutorial. Bye.